Hey, all right. Greetings, everybody. It's me, Tony, and I'm continuing my countdown of the 40 greatest influences of the last 40 years. And I'm all the way to number 10. That's right. I'm in the top 10. And now I'm really nervous because up to this point, I've been, talking about people that probably haven't seen in 30, 25, 20 years. And now I'm getting down to the people that are actually important to me and that might actually have a snowball's chance in hell of reading this. And I'm terrified that I'm going to offend them. But I got a lot of people I want to touch base with on this, and I've actually been planning this, meant to do this back in like Thanksgiving time, and I've like rescheduled it and pushed it off and had to change all the order of everything. So today I'm going to finally cover all of my cousins. Yes, I come from a big family and I have lots of cousins, and I'm going to try and get through them all. And hopefully I don't forget anybody. That's my big fear, is that I'm going to leave out someone somehow, some way. I will not at all be able to remember all of my cousins' children at this point, so I'm just throwing that out here up front. Don't have any expectation that I'm going to remember your little guy. All right. So, first thing I should say though is in my family, both of my parents came from families with six children in each. So that adds up to a lot of opportunity for grandchildren, and all those grandchildren turn out to be my cousins. So, here we go. My dad's side of the family. So, first, there's my dad's older sister, Debbie, and she married Bob Biaggi, and they had three kids. Real briefly about my uncle Bob, like he's the type of the guy that I saw him enough as growing up in the family and whatnot, but he had a tendency to not always be at family gatherings because he usually had fishing or his own family or stuff like that to be attending to. So we kind of got into the habit of like pasting him into pictures. And so I only mention this because there is this one picture that's like a family reunion that I think the Buckleys were in California, so they got pasted in, and then Uncle Bob got pasted in. And I'm actually the only person that's not in that photo because mom made me run track and I was in Spokane at a track meet. Anyways, so Uncle Bob and then Aunt Debbie, who is like the oldest of the Daltoso children of Benny and Marguerite. And yeah, she's always been very motherly to everybody. But I remember my cousins. So they had three kids, Lori and Brad, who are actually older than me. And then there's Greg, who's like my brother's age and has a say here in a minute. There's lots of people that are my brother's age in this. But so Lori is kind of interesting because right now at this point in time, she is like the epicenter of the vortex that is St. Francis Parish in Walla Walla, Washington. She is a Biaggi on her dad's side, a Daltoso on her mom's side. She married a Miyagi. I mean, there's somehow she's probably related to a DCO, a toy, whatever whatever old Italian family. Somehow she's like the epicenter of all of this now. I believe she's got, well, last time I saw her, because it's been a while, I think she had two daughters, because I remember they would play with my son Aeneas. But I don't even know if they've met my 2 year old yet. Hmm. I think, yeah, it's been a couple of years since I was living in Walla Walla, and I know we go over to grandma's, and Aeneas would be playing with her daughters there. Growing up, what I remember most about Lori. So Debbie is the oldest of Benny and Marguerite's six kids, and Michelle was the baby. And it turns out that even like Michelle is my aunt, but actually she's closer in age to me than she is to my dad. And then so Lori, you even like expand that even more. So Lori and Michelle were almost kind of like sisters in a way. And it's kind of got this weird dynamic because Lori was the oldest grandchild, and so she would always walk around being like, I am not a kid. I am a child. And she just sort of like created this own new, I don't know, social strata for her. Like, all of us were at the kids' table, and somehow she would get at the adults' table because she wanted to be there, or she would sort of have like her own card table with her selected, chosen few with her. It's kind of interesting. I, on the other hand, even when I got old enough to be at the adult table, uh, wanted to stay at the kids' table because we could have you know low key food fights, frisbee and salami at each other or something like that, and not have to be using the good china and whatnot. But anyways, that's what I remember most about Lori growing up. Is she was always kind of the oldest and always kind of had that role of take charge because she's the oldest, our Wendy, I guess, kind of thing. That's a Peter Pan reference if you didn't catch that. So yeah, I can remember. I don't know why, but I have this very vivid memory of like me and my other cousins like looking for her and playing detective, and there was something about a like tape player with a microphone. I don't know, but somehow these are what flashes into my head when I think of Lori. And like I said, she's literally propping up the entire existence of an entire church right now. If anything were to happen to her, I swear like there'd be a weird space-time continuum rupture that would like, you know, burst all the stained glass windows in the church or something like that. All right, so that's Lori, my oldest cousin. Next is her brother, Brad. And me and Brad are only about a year apart. So growing up, we were, always best friends when it came to family gatherings and all that kind of stuff. Growing up, Biaggi's lived in Colfax. And usually every spring break, my mom would actually take us kids up to see our cousins in Colfax. And that was always a week that I kind of looked forward to. Brad, like all the Biaggi's, was a baseball player for reasons I still can't understand. But I think baseball's a dumb game anyway. But I actually had a lot of fun playing with Brad in the basement. So this was actually ingenious. He'd have like those little 2 foot souvenir bats, and then we would get gumballs, and we would literally play baseball in like their basements with these souvenir bats and gumballs. It was actually pretty cool. I remember us playing hours and hours of Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball on the Super Nintendo, which I have a Super Nintendo. I probably need to try and get that because it's the only video baseball game I've ever liked. Let's see, me and Brad. So, like I said, we're similar in age, so we were, always very close when we were able to get together. He did. Oh, I remember he would play basketball with me, but we didn't usually play basketball. Basketball, we would play alley oop, which is somebody shoots and then you're either trying to tip it in, or if it's like gonna roll out of bounds, you have to like jump and like save it. You can only touch the ball in the air to try and shoot. Best game ever. You get to pretend like you're, because you always play it on like a 6 foot hoop, so everyone can dunk. It's great. Hours and hours of a good time. Probably too old to play it anymore because my vertical is like this. But yeah. What else do I remember about Brad? So Brad is now like I think he lives in Irvine, and if I remember the sequence of events, because we don't see each other as much anymore. I think he went to college at Yakima or community college and played baseball there. And I think while he was working there, while he was going to school there, he got a part-time job at a Pizza Hut. And if I'm not mistaken, he has moved up the chain through the Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, Pepsi Incorporated, Taco Huts, all of that. And now he's like I don't know if he's a vice president or just a middle manager or what, but seems to be doing quite well for himself in the corporate realm of the Pepsi restaurant business. I think they're in like Irvine or Orange County, SoCal, something there. I've met his wife and his kids only a couple of times. I think they've got kind of a blended family thing going on, which I actually am a little envious of because my guys are like little, and I keep thinking, if I had like a 14-year-old or somebody that I could be coaching, middle school basketball of right about now while, I'm not old, decrepit, and using a cane like I will be by the time my guys are uh, are old enough to play ball. I'm so old. I guess that's the point of all this. But yeah, Brad seems to be doing well for himself. Large family. Um, yeah, living in Cali where the weather's always good. That sounds pretty nice. Then there is Greg. So Greg is like, again, Greg and my brother and my cousin Danny, who I'll get to, and I think my cousin JJ on the other side, were all born, I think, in the same year, roughly, like 84, 85, somewhere in there. And they also all graduated the same year. So they were all very tight. I was less tight with Greg, obviously, because I was hanging out with Brad, and obviously my brother Brian was hanging out with Greg a lot. Haven't seen Greg in forever. I do kind of follow him on Facebook a little bit. Looks like he was playing baseball out in South Dakota and then ended up staying out there, which is kind of weird. I remember because he had his wedding out there while I was living in Missouri. No, South Dakota, or was it? No, it's Iowa. Ah, yes, Iowa, because everybody had to go, was driving out there to go to the wedding, and I wasn't going to the wedding, probably because I hadn't seen Greg in 10 years, which makes sense. But I had to drive to a wedding, ironically, in Minnesota from Missouri, where I was living, which made me drive all the way through Iowa. Wow. Do not want to do that again. Don't know how you're managing it, but you got like 6 kids, and you seem like you're happy and you're still involved. I think with baseball out there, which is great. So yeah, if I was Debbie and Bob and 20, well, let's just go 40 years ago, I thought, hey, in 40 years, where could me and my kids be? I think you'd be pretty happy if I could time travel and tell you those results. So that is the Biaggi clan. All right, next we have the Buckleys. So Lynn, who, and honestly, I don't know in the pantheon. I think it went Debbie, and then my dad, and then Lynn, and then Mike, and then Gina and Michelle. But I'm not sure. Maybe Lynn and Mike are reversed. Anyways, so I'm gonna go with Lynn being next in line. Then we got the Buckleys because she married Jay Buckley, and they've got 3 kids. They've got Danny, Trevor, and Max. So the thing I will say that I remember most about the Buckleys is they lived in like Anaheim down in California for a while. And one summer, they actually had come up, and then they let me and my brother Brian road trip back down home to Anaheim to spend a week with them. A lot of fun hijinks ensued, as you can imagine, with 5 cousins hanging out together. It was a little weird because, like I said, there's an age gap where Brian and Danny were about 12, and then Trevor obviously was a little younger. But that put me at like the 15 age range, and I remember Jay still telling me before going to bed, like, "Did you go potty?" Like seriously, just because it's a reference, just force of habit, because he wants to make sure he doesn't have to, have any wet bed in the middle of the night. But yeah, that was kind of a bit of a trip. Another thing that was a bit of a trip on that trip, we went and played laser tag, and I kind of sucked it up. I think I think there was a technical problem or whatever, but because all of us finished with like negative scores. Trevor was like the least negative, and he got an immortal score, like negative 500 or something like that. So I let the rest of them play again, and I was just hanging out with Aunt Lynn. And that was actually, I remember that distinctly because that was the first time I'd ever had a conversation, because obviously I was 15, we were talking about high school, and then talking about what I was going to do after high school. And she was the first person to ever tell me I didn't have to go to college. I mean, not like I listened, because I did go to college, but she was the first person in my life that ever actually talked to me about, oh, I didn't have to go to college. It was set in stone. Like literally up until that point, I had always just thought of college as, the next 4 years of high school. Like it was just a requirement. So anyway, that tells me a little bit about Lynn and Jay and how they might have saw the world a little slightly different from the way that I had been seeing things and raised in Walla Walla up until that point. So the really cool thing was when they finally moved back to Walla Walla, and I got to hang out with my cousins there even more. They moved back. I actually think it was right about the time I was graduating from high school and going in, because they ended up. I don't think I ever spent a year in school with Danny, because I think he came his sophomore year. Yeah, and because Brian was a freshman when I graduated. But I was still going to the community college. I was still in Walla Walla. I was still hanging out. And Danny and Trevor, and then they had little Max, who, gosh, it's weird because like Max was like 2 at the time. So it's weird to think. Last time I went from oldest down to youngest. This time I'm going to go from youngest up. So Max, man, I remember Max when he was a little guy. He's probably like a year, maybe 2 when they moved back, and I just remember like Danny and Trevor like walking downstairs carrying Max into the basement, and he just would be down there hanging out playing with all of us older kids. It's pretty cool. That's the way I try to envision my 2-year-old now. Obviously I'm a little bit more like no, don't get into that, and it's not quite as cool for me. But because before, if Max made a big mess, it was funny. Now if Ty makes a big mess, it's trouble. Anyways, so I love Max. Max always had that curly hair when he was a kid and was really cute. I distinctly remember, and this was really cool, when I was at Washington State, uh, Max actually sent me a care package of cookies one time. That he might be the only person that sent me a care package of cookies. I think I got other care packages, but Max is the only one that sent me one with cookies. So right on, Max. Appreciate that. Ah, another cool thing about Max, I appreciate, is he's been an actor. Right, he's another master thespian. So someone had to. If you ever listen to the post on my Walla Walla Catholic Schools, you'll know that me going up on stage turned out to always be an awful idea. But I saw Max perform, and he was great. He was some of the best parts of the show. He was Puck in A Midnight Summer in Joyzy, if I remember correctly. I might be butchering that a little bit. Anyways, it was cool because by the time Max was like a junior, senior in high school, I was living in Walla Walla again, and we could hang out. And it was a little eerie how well I was able to hang out with like a 17-year-old. I would like to say it's because of, Max's maturity, but it's probably not that. Anyways, about that time, I got the honor of giving Max the Mark Del Toso Memorial Scholarship. That was pretty cool to be able to keep it in the family. And that's like the last time I think I've been back to DeSales, actually, now that I think about it. Max, after that, Max played Hoop Fest with his brother Trevor and me and Nick. That was a lot of fun, except I sucked it up and we lost out the first day, and I sprained my ankle, as I always do. Sort of my unofficial retirement from the game of basketball. So that's a little bittersweet, but I really liked playing with Max. Glad that he was there. All right, so that's Max. Let's move on to Trevor. So Trevor. So growing up, they're both a little bit younger than me, but I always thought that my cousin Nick and my cousin Trevor were probably the 2 cousins that I was sort of the most like. Not really sure how that fits now that we grow up and you look at us and you wouldn't even think that we were related, much less have anything in common. But they were the guys I tended to feel like, hey, these guys are like me. I don't know. I maybe wishful thinking on my part. But anyways, Trevor. I mean, most of you have seen his at his wedding, and I wasn't there because I was working, but my wife and son were. Sending my regards. But I saw the video, and I know that he and his wife they can get down. But Trevor's always been able to get down. MC Trev, 69 Boys, Tootsie Roll. I remember that. A little bit of Bobby Brown. I don't know, probably some Color Me Bad. I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, I kind of remember me and Trevor sort of vibing on that kind of energy when we were. Well, I was probably like 15 and he was like 11 or something like that. I may have been younger. I don't even know. How old are you, Trevor? I don't even know. He was, like I said, was on my Hoop Fest team, and that was like the first and only time I really met his soon-to-be wife at that point. Let's see, what else did me and Trevor do together? I don't know. Trevor, like I said, always very easygoing, very cool. Um, you know, I always thought that it was like we had a lot of sports type stuff in common. I mean, he's a Raiders fan, but still he's a loyal Raiders fan, and even when they've sucked it up for the last decade, he's still stayed a loyal Raiders fan, which I appreciate, and that's the way I tend to be. Uh, we both stayed in Eastern Washington to go to college. Uh, he went to the same college that my baby sister went to. And if I remember correctly, he was a sports management major. I was a sport management minor. I was a sport management major until I decided to switch it up about 3 times back and forth between communication, and then I just became a sports management minor after briefly flirting with the idea of being a double major. Anyways, so yeah, me and Trevor have always had a lot in common. Trevor's always been, I thought, super chill, and maybe that's just the way I wanted to be. But yeah, I love Trevor. And he's got 2 baby girls now, and I have 2 baby boys now. So I guess things just balance out in the universe that way. Maybe we could switch 1 for 1 if you have one that's particularly troublesome. Because I know I do. I won't tell you which one because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't trade my boys. Okay, and then there's Danny. So Danny, what can I say about Danny? That's not going to sound like it's offensive. So I don't know why I have this memory. For some reason, I can remember being in Grandma and Grandpa's living room, and I don't know. I said something to Danny, and he got upset and kind of butthurt, and I was trying to apologize, and his mom came over and was talking to him. And just out of nowhere, he like sucker punches me. And it kind of hurt, but at the same time it was funny, so I was sort of like laughing and had the wind knocked out of me at the same time, which probably made it look like I got hurt worse than I did. But one of the few times, well, not the few times, but one of the many times that I got to hear Daniel Ryan Buckley out of his mom's mouth. But me and Danny were actually always cool as far as I know. As a group of us cousins, obviously there were a lot of angsty, testosterone, hormone fueled teenage boys hanging out, and we'd rip on each other quite a bit. Danny, okay, so Danny's never been fat, overweight really by any standard, but he's always been a bigger, kind of more, filled out from the time that he was younger. And when you compare that to guys like me or like Brian or even like Matthew, who I'll get to in a second, and Greg and Brad, like we were all, especially as teenagers, just like, skinny string guys, and everybody is kind of like grown up and filled out except me. But Danny was just always, just a little bit of a different, whatever, ectomorph versus endomorph or whatever the, I don't know, body morphic terminology is. But he kind of took a little bit, like he would always be called the fat one, just because it was sort of the identity that he rolled with. But I remember one time we were like kind of that, and I don't know why. I was like, I'm the ugly one, and someone else, and Danny was like, no, I want to be the ugly one. I'm tired of being the fat one. And I don't know why, but those are the types of things that just kind of stick in my head. Just having fun, spending hours and hours because DVDs had come out and they had a DVD or player, PlayStation 2 or whatnot, and that being the thing, and just spending hours in grandma's basement. If we weren't doing that, we were playing some bastardized version of pool, with or without cues. What else do I remember about Danny? Man, I got visions of him doing voices of a lumberjack, talking about things being whacktastic. I don't even remember what that was for. I think it was a picture of a guy from my yearbook. No, none of this makes much sense. But this is the stream of consciousness that I get when I think of Danny. As far as I know, he's down in like Palm Springs still doing the golf course management type thing. I don't really know. It's been a while since I've talked to any of y'all. But Danny, I remember you and I love you. And maybe we'll get together one of these holidays once all this COVID junk is over. All right, so there you have it. Max, Trevor, and Danny Buckley. So moving right along. So after the Buckleys, we have the. I'm going with Uncle Mike is going to be next in age, and so I've got Uncle Mike, who is my dad's brother. Real quick thing. Um, I'll talk more about my dad at some other point, but dad and Mike were brothers and roughly similar to how me and my brother Brian are. So I would occasionally hear stories about my dad and my uncle Mike, kind of getting into it as kids. Uh, the one I remember the most is apparently, and now I can't even remember who was who, but one of them threw the other through the screen door at Grandma and Grandpa's one time. This always, I think, over a bat foul in a basketball game being played in the driveway. That almost exact thing has happened with me and my brother so many times that the fact that it only happened once with them, I guess, shows the degeneration of each subsequent generation. I didn't mean to turn a phrase there, but that was a mouthful. I'm surprised I spit it out. Anyway, so my Uncle Mike. So I'm going to get a little sad here for a second because I'm going to reminisce about my Uncle Mike and his first wife, my Aunt Karen. I always liked my Aunt Karen, and I felt bad to this day because Karen ended up dying in childbirth or right after, while I was in college at Washington State. And I remember my mom calling me and giving me the news, and I was kind of like stunned. I think it was like on like a Wednesday, and the funeral was gonna be like that weekend. But I was kind of stuck there in Pullman, didn't really have a way down. I probably could have pulled some strings with my aunt, with the Biagis and Colfax to make that happen. Um, but there was like, I remember there being like a test or something, whatever. I've always regretted that, is my point, because I can remember years later very distinctly, having my cousins and stuff there to support me when my dad passed away. So I really feel bad about that. That was that was definitely something that I regret because I miss my Aunt Karen and would have liked the opportunity to be there for her family when they needed it, and she wasn't able to be there for them. But at any rate, my Uncle Mike and Aunt Karen had three kids, Nicole, Nick, and Madison. So I'm just going to start with Nicole. So Nicole and I were pretty close growing up. I think, I can't remember. I'm a little bit older than her. I think she's actually closer to my brother. So we're probably like 2 years apart or something like that. But she's a girl, so she's a little more mature, I guess. So she and I were always very close. I was a little surprised because I would often get in trouble anytime my family would go, because every like summer or vacation we'd always go to Vancouver and meet up with all my other family. All of these cousins seemed to be in Vancouver except for the Biagis at one point. We'd go see all our cousins in Vancouver, and there's been more than one time when I was hanging out with Mike and Karen, Kolnick and Madison. And I had a tendency to start hanging out with my Uncle Mike playing basketball or, playing with Nick or basically not paying attention to the, more socially involved things that a, 12, 13-year-old girl would be expecting from her, teenage boy cousin. And I got into some trouble for that. Ooh, she would get mad at me, and I would be the type of mad I wouldn't even know about it. It's exactly like that episode of Full House where Kirk Cameron came on to be the cousin and DJ and him because they're brother and sister in real life, but they were cousins on the episode. Exactly like that. But anyways, we're still pretty tight. At least I would like to think we are. Well, we're kind of like Facebook tight. I haven't actually talked to her in years, but she talks to my wife, I think, a lot. Probably still over Facebook. But connection's connection. Her boys and at least my older son were very close. Aeneas still plays like online Minecraft and stuff with Angelo. She's got two teenage boys though, and again, like I said with Brad, I'm kind of jealous because I'm still waiting for my boys to grow up, and by the time they're old enough to really do anything seriously athletic, I'm going to be in a wheelchair. So that's a little bittersweet. But she is a fantastic mom. Um, from what I've seen, like she's, one mom with three boys and a husband, so it's really more like four boys. Uh, yeah, and she's always been so cool. Like she's never really been a tomboy because she was always, still very girly. But I mean, she was a great soccer player and she played basketball. And I don't know, she probably ran track too. Yeah, I think she did because she is quite fast actually. I think I've seen her trying to show up her son, who's really fast. I don't even want to go here, but she's got a little bit of history with number 36 on the countdown. No, 37 on the countdown. 36 is Michael Jordan. You'll have to see who number 37 is. Okay, no, you don't have to see. It's my friend Casey. Yeah, Casey and her kind of had a little bit of, it never became much of anything, but they both kind of like had the hots for each other, and I was sort of stuck trying to mediate that relationship, which was fun at times and then very awkward at other times. I remember the two of them trying to give me a makeover one time. They decided to give up on the makeover with me and just make out instead. So that's kind of how that went. But yeah, lots of fun with Nicole. Every time I go to Seaside, I remember our families going to the beach together and walking down the promenade. That is really fun. You guys are only like a couple hours up in whatever, like Tacoma area, uh, University Place, maybe. I don't know. Not that far. We really should hang out more often. I suspect you come down to see Uncle Mike, and we're probably just a couple blocks away. We should probably make something happen then. But anyways, Nicole, love you and all of your boys. Then we got Nick. So Nick is the other cousin that kind of like Trevor that I thought I kind of related to or was kind of most similar to. I don't know why, because I guess I was just wanting to be a really good athlete like he was. Because he was a pretty good athlete. I can't remember. I think he played college ball in something. Might have been track. Maybe he did. I don't know. He went to Central. Which I almost went to Central. All our parents went to Central, apparently. Uh, yeah, he's. I'm in his fantasy basketball league, which I was really excited to get into, and then I totally butchered my draft. Like I took, oh gosh, yeah, I didn't want to take LeBron in the first round, so I ended up taking Devin Booker. It just hasn't worked out at all. Anyways, so wow, suddenly struck me how good I'm getting at whining in my old age. Not that I was ever not good at it. Anyways, me and Nick, um, we played, Hoop Fest, Hot Hoops, Beach Basket Classic, a number of times over the years. Could always count on him to play ball with me. which if you've read any of the other countdown, it's pretty much the most important thing to me and any person is if you'll play basketball with me. Pretty much all I really care about. Seriously, read the rest of the countdown. He's a teacher here in and I have mixed feelings about this, but I sort of want to stay like in or move just east a little bit because I would like for my boys to be caught by cousin Nick, when they get old enough. I think that'd be pretty cool. I really want them to have Uncle Mike teach them, but I don't think that's going to quite happen because, like I said, they're not quite old enough. Although Aeneas is pretty smart, maybe I get him to skip a few grades, but then Mike would have to still hang on for another couple of years, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. But cousin Nick, I think, is definitely a possibility, so that could be really good. Waiting for that. He has a lovely wife, Jessica, and his wedding I did go to. Um, didn't go to Trevor's, didn't go to Greg's, but went to his. And they've got a little girl. I think it's Brooklyn, but if it no, it's Braylon. Braylon. Oh gosh, forgive me, Nick. I know I'm butchering that. That's terrible. This is why I'm nervous here. And they've got another one on the way. I think this one's going to be a boy. I think they had the gender reveal. I want to say boy, but again, now I'm questioning everything. So, going to have two, and then, we'll just have to get all of our kids together. I mean, eventually, like, his daughter and my baby son are going to be, like, within a year or something of each other, and so it's all going to be gravy anyways. But yeah, Nick is kind of think, I never wanted to be a teacher. Uncle Mike always said, like, why don't you be a teacher? And Karen always like, why don't you be a teacher? And I've always been, because I don't want to have to deal with a classroom full of kids. Oh, but now, thanks to COVID, you don't even have to deal with a classroom full of kids. You just have to deal with an internet full of kids. And how is that much different from what I'm doing right here, right now? Okay, granted, this isn't live, um, but still. I don't know. No, I'm not going to be a teacher. But seeing Nick do it and seeing him coach, and you know, I've always heard about Uncle Mike and how rewarding it is. Sometimes I wonder about that, but it sounds like Nick is taking after his father and really enjoying what he's doing in the life that he's creating, and that I'm very happy for him about. Okay, so that's Nick, and then we've got Madison. So I have uh, very fond memories, and I don't know if she remembers this at all, but Madison was probably young enough, and I was probably old enough that when I would hang out, with her family, that I would sort of, by default, become sort of the babysitter because naturally, Nick and Nicole were sick of dealing with their little sister for a little while, and she wanted to play, so. I don't know if it was so much her following me around or me following her around, but yeah, chasing after little Madison, and because she would make a mess with toys. One time she literally was after Christmas, and all those tins of popcorn. Literally just saw her rip it open, dump it out over her head, shake it out, throw it across the room, and then run off to do something else. Like that was little Maddie. But yeah, pushing her on the swings, chasing her down the slide, running around the backyard. I remember doing all of that for quite a while with Madison. And then, I was moved away for a while, and she kind of grew up between the 8, 9, 10 stage into the full blown teenage adult, especially for a girl who could probably, pass as older. So honestly, for the longest time, I will say this, Maddie. I suspect, I could be wrong because I have to go back and do the math, but I never do that math. I suspect that you were lying on your Facebook profile about how old you were because the numbers totally blew my mind about how fast you grew up. But then again, kids grow up quick. And now she's got, I'm going to butcher his name, Josh. Anyways, I met him one time at Nick's when we had dinner with them all together a couple years ago. He's from the Bay Area. Seems like a very cool guy. I like him. She like honestly like she I believe she's like a talent recruitment coordinator or something along those lines for Fisher Investments, which is just over here in Camas. And I won't lie because I see her throwing out we're hiring and looking for talent at LinkedIn that I like sometimes look at that and think, sometimes I have bad days at work and I'm like, I need to find a new job. And I'm thinking, hey, maybe my little cousin Maddie could hook me up. I think about that more often than I like to admit. But she seems like she's doing well. Oh, she went to Washington State, right? She's a Coug like me, which I think is very cool and I really like. She, another thing about Uncle Mike, right? That makes me think of this because initially he gave me like the green light, like, hey, graduate from high school, come out, move in with us. You can go to live with me, go to school at Clark, and then do the Washington State Vancouver thing. And obviously, I live here now, and I'm like, why didn't I do this at the time? But it had to do with my dad and wanting to stay close to home. Um, but what might have been. So I totally think that's cool that she was able to do Pullman and then the Vancouver campus. That sounds like something I would have liked. Anyways, that is Nicole, Nick, and Madison. Okay, so now we're moving to the next family, and that is my Aunt Gina and Uncle Doug Hauser and their two kids, Natalie and Matthew. So I hate to play favorites or whatnot, but Aunt Gina was probably my favorite aunt growing up, at least when I was a real little kid. I don't know why. I thought she was very nice, and maybe like here's the irony from where I live now. She's told me like, yeah, they used to actually manage an apartment complex or whatever that's like only a few blocks away from where I live now. And I do. I think I remember visiting them and seeing them there, which is just sort of a trip how things, all come full circle. And, I think about how young they probably were then and how old I am now. Oh, I'm so old. Anyways, so I remember I always had a very fond place in my heart for Aunt Gina. And Uncle Doug was so Doug was always much more, I don't know if energetic or playful or those are the words I would use, but he just seemed to have like a extra level of like happiness and joy to him that just seemed to be above and beyond what was like normal. And I mean, he obviously would have his good moments and his bad, and he'd be, worried about his kids or mad at his kids or upset about the way a football game was going or something like that. But he always just seemed to be enjoying himself just a smidgen more than anyone else, in the same situation, when we were all together. So I always kind of admired that and wish I kind of had that in some way. And I don't know, but I think maybe it's rubbing off on his kids. Not that I imagine Natalie and Matthew going happy, happy, joy, joy, or anything. But actually, now that I think about it, I can't imagine that, and it's kind of a funny thought. Anyways, so Natalie. So Natalie was always really tight with my sister Stephanie because they were about the same age. And I can distinctly remember, being at Grammy and Grandpa's when she was, I don't know, still in diapers, but having her Mickey Mouse pacifier, and she was like big into Mickey Mouse at that time. And I remember her parents trying to explain, oh yeah, she really likes Mickey Mouse. I'm like, oh, he's like her idol. And they're like, no, not an idol. Well, not really, because an idol is usually someone you aspire to be like, unless you're talking about it an idol as in like the Bible sense, where it's like a false god that you're worshiping. But anyways, I digress. For some reason, that like stream of thought also just took me to at one point in time, Natalie and Matthew were not allowed to watch The Simpsons, and I think like 6 months down the road from that established point in time, I feel like I can remember playing like the Simpsons video games on uh, PlayStation at their house and whatnot, and watching the Simpsons. So you know what, restrictions with kids, kind of a loose boundaries kind of thing, at least in my experience. Anyways, so yeah, I remember Natalie being, and I would do. Oh, sorry, real quick, I'm gonna flash back to Madison. I don't think I ever did this with Natalie, but I definitely did this with Madison. So we'd be downstairs in my grandparents' basement, and there'd be a bed on the wall, or a bed up against the wall, and I would sit in front of the bed, and it would be like Dirty Dancing kind of thing. I'd be Patrick Swayze, and have the kids run at me, and I would catch them and throw them up, and they'd backflip over and land onto the bed. sometimes sometimes it would be backflip onto the bed. Sometimes they just went into the wall. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't cause any brain damage. I know I did that with Maddie. I know for a fact I did it with Maddie. Her mom was a gymnast. Like, she should be able to. I don't know if I did that with Natalie or not. It's all getting fuzzy. I don't think I did, because I would have done it with I probably did it with Maddie, and I probably did it with my baby sister Jaylee, but I don't think I did it with Stephanie, so I probably didn't do it with Natalie. Anyways, your loss. But Natalie, man, I remember when I was living in Portland, and I don't know why I remember this so definitively, but Natalie and her boyfriend, the ever popular Mock, at the time, actually were the only people I could get to help me and Christina move when we moved. I think we moved from downtown Portland just out to Beaverton or something like that. But yeah, I remember she was the one who was like, "Oh yeah, sure, we can help." And yeah, what else can I remember about Natalie? Man, I only see her nowadays in like, for Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving's always at her house. Now that's like a new family tradition. Well, it's pretty cool that they were able to wrestle that away from Walla Walla. That's actually really impressive. I went to her wedding. I remember her wedding, very nice wedding. I remember having a conversation with Grandma Marguerite about Natalie at her wedding, about how she has really great. I can't remember what the word Grandma used, like presence, I guess, or something like that. Like, she always presents really, really well. But Natalie had been her wedding day, and she was actually like very kind of shy and demure, and Grandma was sort of making a comparison there between me and her. I don't know, cause yeah, I'm doing this right now, but I'm, you know, you guys all know I'm actually pretty shy and ridiculous when it comes to anything important or serious, which is why it's taken me since Thanksgiving to actually sit down and say any of this stuff. Natalie's got her daughter Ava, who my boys really like. And again, forgive me because I'm blanking on the new baby's name. Oh, and I can see the picture of Ava holding her, and it's oh so cute. But names are escaping me. She's married to her husband, and I'm gonna say his name is Ben, but I might be wrong on that because I'm a little brain fried at the moment. But yeah, my wife and I keep saying we need to use him to get new tires or something like that, or new brakes or whatever. But anyways, we just go to Midas and then, uh, complain about being overcharged or not. He's a really cool guy. I've never talked to him really in depth. I've only kind of like hung out with him in family type settings. But everyone, seems to rave about him, and Natalie obviously seems pretty happy. What else was I gonna say about Natalie? Something about going to private schools versus public schools, and I think we had a conversation about that one time, but now I really don't remember. Yeah. Anyways, sorry, Natalie. I don't mean to let you down here, but absolutely, we always talk about how we need to like get our kids together and spend more time and have family dinners and whatnot, and we never do because it's the way of the world, unfortunately. But maybe this will inspire someone like myself to get on that and make something happen before I get 10 years older. We'll see, because we'll all be 10 years older. Ooh. All right. So Natalie has a brother. His name is Matthew, or I always called him Matt. But Matt is actually the most legitimately accomplished athlete of our family. I mean, it's tennis, which I can't hold against you because, yeah, I can't play tennis. Never been able to play tennis. I think me and Matt tried to play tennis one time. I think I went with him to the athletic club. I think it was the Evergreen Club, which whatever. Um, but yeah, we bailed on tennis very very quickly because I was simply no good, and luckily he liked basketball enough to play with me. And that court was really cool because it actually had an NBA 3 point line painted on it, which is like, because it had like the shorter line, which is probably college, and then the NBA line on there too. Which I've never else in my life have I ever had an NBA 3 point line except for that one time with Matt at that club. So that was pretty cool. But I remember Matt as a kid, and he was very, I kind of talked about his dad, Uncle Doug, being like, just that extra level of like sort of happy, happy, joy, joy, exuberance. And yeah, Matt kind of had that on crack when he was like 7, 8 years old, and we always give him that time about getting excited watching Baywatch, like babes in bikinis, but or uh anyways, but that's probably a bad example because it could be about opening presents, or it could be about going to McDonald's or whatever. Just that level of enthusiasm, that just showed all over his face and would just come out as exuberance. So I always remember that, and you know, I, now I see him, and he seems very grown up and mild mannered, and he's like 6'6" now, and just huge and ripped, and I'm very jealous because I used to be able to like put him in a headlock if I wanted to, and now God, he would rip me in half. So yes, he was, and I don't know. I'm gonna like throw out a triple digit number that's gonna sound insulting, but it's not because there's literally like thousands of high school tennis players, and at one time I think he was like ranked as high as like number like 106, or maybe it was even as high as 76 or something like that in his age bracket. So that's actually really really impressive, and he is literally a tennis pro. Like he's a professional athlete. Like that I'm very awe-inspired on. So I remember hanging out with the Hauser family after college when I was in Vancouver, kind of looking for a job. And I was legitimately looking, but I was looking where I wanted to look and not necessarily where jobs were. And I remember, Gina and Doug were trying very hard to come up with a nice way of explaining that to me because, my parents weren't around to do it at the time. Ah. And, they'd be trying to have this conversation to me while me and Matthew were watching Cartoon Network for like, the 6 hour, going on the 6 hour that day. Yeah. Uh, so Oh man, Doug's also like I've been fortunate enough because his company and taking me to Blazer games, and actually Nick I think actually gave up his ticket to let me to do that the last time. So thank you to both of them. That was awesome. So yeah, I'm fortunate to say I actually have seen Damian Lillard from like about 5 6 rows back, which is pretty cool. Um, yeah, Matthew. The funny thing I'll say about Matthew, this is where I'm gonna get my mouth's gonna get me in trouble, but he always seems to have a very nice girlfriend. he seems to have a type though, because I only see him like at family events or something, every year, every other year. And I always meet his girlfriend, and I'm like, wait, is this a new one or the same one, or did she just do her hair different? And I always feel bad, but I think he's had, a couple that have been similar. But anyways, yeah, anyways, uh, I don't know if he's engaged or was engaged, but maybe now he's not. Anyways, this is all reason why I need to pledge to be the galvanizing force to try and get all of us cousins hanging out together, doing you know more stuff, especially now that we're all having kids that need to know their second cousins. All right, so that is the Hauser family, which I believe only leaves. Yes, I think that is it for my dad's side because because there is Shell's baby of the family, who, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't have any children of her own because she's been like a kindergarten teacher or a special ed teacher or a first grade teacher for the last, I don't even want to think how, because it'll make us both feel old. But like I said, Aunt Michelle is actually closer to my age than she is to my dad's age. Um, so that was always cool. Yeah, I remember her babysitting for us, and I don't know how. I think she went somewhere, but I remember her bringing freeze dried ice cream, which was a really cool thing. I remember one time she was supposed to be babysitting, and that's how I got the scar on my face, because right as my parents were about to go out for the anniversary, I come, crying in the door because I just crashed my bike, broke my glasses, and cut my face open. But later that night, my parents tried to salvage the evening after taking me to the emergency room. And she had obviously been watching my siblings for the rest of the night. And she had freeze dried ice cream, which to this day, I don't know if that's really a thing or like, I don't, it's kind of chalky. So that's all I really remember. But yeah, she would babysit for us quite a bit. And she would babysit, but she'd be doing her homework. And I'd be like, gee, Aunt Michelle, you're no fun. And then she'd be like, well, it's just a fact of life that Aunt Michelle's not fun as she's, you know, studying. And she'd say facts of life. And I didn't know what the phrase facts of life meant. I just assumed she was talking about the show with Tootie in it. So, anyways, that actually puzzled me for quite a few years, but I was always too embarrassed to ask anyone what the heck that was supposed to mean. Finally figured it out though. Thanks, Aunt Michelle. Let's see. She is getting married to her boyfriend James, who's a very cool guy. Very cool. My son Aeneas really likes him because he plays Pokemon. James does with Aeneas, and setting the bar a little high for dad, who doesn't know anything about Pokemon, can't catch a Pokemon, can't seem to figure out any Pokemon video games. But James can. So yeah, yeah. But Aeneas loves Pokemon, and I think James and Michelle might have been the ones that really. I think his aunt Stephanie is the one that actually introduced him to it, but Michelle and James kind of took it to another level. But that just means that anytime they would like, to play with Aeneas, he's all yours. All right. So that is Michelle and James. And I think that is Michelle's the baby. So hopefully I didn't forget anyone. And that is it from my dad's side of the family. So my cousins on my mom's side of the family. Now my mom also came from a family of 6 kids, but only half of them had children of their own. So there is my Aunt Mary, who was the oldest. And my Aunt Mary, I mean, even to this day, she still Facebook stalks me, and she sends presents and gifts to my children. She's always been very involved in our family. She remembers things that I don't. I remember from my high school graduation, she brought me like this stuffed animal seagull, uh, falcon, I don't remember, and hung it up in my room. And I was like, "The heck is this?" And she had remembered me like wanting one from the time I was like, you know, like 4 or 5, 6 years old. Had remembered it all this time. Had seen one, and then it actually. I hope she hadn't been holding it for like 15 years, but yeah, actually brought it and hung it in my room uh, when I graduated. So that just shows like how invested she's been in her family, and I'm very thankful that she's continuing to do that. And I think it's pretty cool. Uh, and Nias and Ty get presents from Great Aunt Mary. That's pretty cool. Um, yeah, she just sent a couple weeks ago. Like she sent a picture of her dog, and my Tiberius loves doggies, and he loves the picture of that doggy. He gets so excited when he sees it. Anyway, that's my Aunt Mary. Never saw a whole lot of her personally because she was always in Virginia, or Washington D.C., across the country. So when I did see her, it'd be because she would come back for like month long trips. So I only got her in small doses, but they were usually pretty intense doses. Let's see. After Aunt Mary, there's my Uncle Stanley, who I haven't seen in a while. The last time I did see him was at some kind of family function, and it had both sides of the family. Because I think I remember Trevor asking me, like, Tony, what is that hippie doing at your graduation party or whatever it was? Yeah, because Uncle Stanley, like, I've seen pictures of him when he was younger, and like I think he was in the Navy and stuff like that, and he was very, um, like he had kind of the Tom Selleck mustache and whatnot. But in later years, like he kind of went full hippie. He had the gray hair, but it was like long and still quite bushy and lustrous, if I remember correctly. His he See, this is where I'm gonna say things that are bad. Like he, in the course of his lifetime, I got to meet several of his girlfriends over time. And I remember one who crocheted like the best. It was like a weighted blanket before weighted blankets, without any like lead weights or sand weights in it. Like it was just so heavy duty. I took it to college at Washington State, and like it kept me warm through Pullman winters. Like that was I remember that very distinctly. I wonder what happened to that. It's got to be buried at my mom's house somewhere. Uh, yeah, that was awesome. Um, yeah, what else I know Uncle Stanley? Oh, of course. How could I forget? Like he rode a motorcycle. Like he was that uncle, right? The motorcycle uncle, the single cool motorcycle. Like that was my Uncle Stanley. I remember, I've still got my mom still has pictures of me like on it. I'm like probably 4 years old and sitting on it, trying to hold the handlebars. Pretty cool. Uncle Stanley. What else can I say about Uncle Stanley? Yeah, I remember him giving me like a larger than expected cash reward in the card when I graduated. So yeah, I was a little surprised at that, but again, very grateful. Um, Uncle Stanley. Okay, so then after Uncle Stanley, I think it was my mom, and then I think it was Jim, no, Barb, Jim, and then Chris. Yeah, I think Jim and Chris were the babies. Okay, so my aunt Barb, she and her husband Terry at the time lived only a few blocks away from when I was growing up and still lived in College Place. And I got to babysit for my little cousin Marshall um, sometimes. And it was I wasn't even I wanted I want to say I almost wasn't even old enough to babysit. I was probably like 11, something like that. But I was responsible, right? So I would, and like I said, it was only a couple of blocks away. It's not like I couldn't have ran home, called my mom if I really, really needed to. But yeah, she'd go out for a couple of hours, and I'd hang out, give Marshall, dinner, which was like, I don't know, chicken nuggets, a TV dinner, spaghetti, something like that. kind of clean up a little bit, and then we'd watch, videos of like Yogi Bear and other Hanna Barbera classics, I suppose. And I didn't even have to put him to bed because we would literally just fold out the couch sofa, and we'd just be laying there watching TV, and he'd fall asleep, and I'd still be there watching TV when she would come home, and she'd tuck him in and take him to bed, and I would spend the night, and then she would buy me stuff as a reward, like hats and like Trailblazer and Supersonics hats and anything that at the time had the starter logo on the back because that was dope. Yeah. My cousin Marshall. So he's and I don't even know the term exactly. I think I won't even go there. He's got a little bit of autism or something like that along those lines. Um, and so it's crazy now to have seen him like grow up, and then he was living with my grandma Kay for a while, and then he was living with his dad, and then I think he had like his own scooter for a while, and then he had like his car, and I'm like in my 30s, and he's like 25, and now all of a sudden I'm pushing 40, and he's like in his 30s because he's like similar in age to my sister, and I'm thinking, my gosh, because he's huge. He really is. Like he's a big, solid kid, and always kind of was. He takes after his dad, I guess. I always felt bad because Marshall was always really into video games and really kind of was able to nerd out on stuff, and I it's kind of like with me and the Pokemon stuff I was just talking about with Aeneas. Like there was just enough of a gap that the types of games and characters and popular stuff that I would sort of out about was just slightly ahead of what he was really into. So we weren't quite able to connect and bond on that level. It's been a little while. It's probably been 4 or 5 since I've moved to Vancouver. I haven't seen him, but yeah, I mean it was cool because I was, he would occasionally stop by my mom's house, and I'd be over there, and he'd be like, "Hey, I was just in the neighborhood on my way home from work, and thought I'd stop by and see Aunt Susan." And I'm like, "Wow, like he's doing the job of keeping family connections together that I'm been complaining this whole video that I am not doing." So kudos to you, Marshall Woodland, for keeping your family together. That's very important. Let's see. So there was my aunt, and then there's Cindy and Chris. They've never had any children, at least that I'm aware of. Um, Cindy was a Payetta, which is another Italian family quasi related to Lori, probably by now at St. Francis. Uh, yeah, I'm trying to remember vaguely. I don't remember the last time I saw them. I want to say that they were like, Uncle Chris was over. Gosh, it must have been like, it was before I even left from Missouri. So it was like 10, 12 years ago. Yeah, been a while. And then I think they moved to Texas. And I don't kind of lost track of them since then. I don't know. I have to ask my mom. Um, but yeah, but I do remember because Uncle Anthony and Uncle Chris bought me my favorite like gift item thing ever when I was like 4 or 5 years old. They got me an inflatable, rideable battle cat. Best thing I've ever been given in my entire life. All-time favorite thing. You know, just yeah, that was the best, just the best thing, period. So thank you, Uncle Chris and Cindy. And that I believe takes me to, I guess Chris was the baby of the family. So his older brother, but I think still younger than Aunt Barb, was my Uncle Jim. So Jim and his wife Debbie, and they actually had four kids, like my mom had four kids. So interesting thing about my uncle Jim is he was principal and then superintendent of schools in Pomeroy, and Pomeroy just happens to be rival school to in the same district as DeSales where I went to school. So yeah, he was like, you know, his family and cousins, they were all sort of like rivalry enemy territory, which, made it all the more fun to have games in Pomeroy or to have Pomeroy come to us. Yeah, I can remember going out there because they'd be like football games and we'd end up going over to Jim and Debbie's and seeing everybody and having dinner or whatnot. Um, yeah, what else? I don't know. Again, I'm saying it's a mixed bag a little bit, but no offense in any way, shape, or form. I can remember my uncle Jim and me always wanting to impress him like I did with everybody because I was a little attention whore. And I can remember like it didn't dawn on me when I was like a little guy, but I can think back on it now, like how much time and effort he actually put into kind of humoring me when I was like holding him hostage away from the rest of the adults. Like Uncle Jim, look at me, look what I can do. Like I can make a basket, I can stand on my head, I can roll around on the ground, I can throw rocks. Like, gee, that's great, Tony. I need to get back to yeah, I owe you an apology. I'm sorry. Yeah. Now that I guess it's one of the things you gotta wait till you have kids, and now when it's like, daddy, 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 let's go upstairs, let's do this, play Legos, read this, read that. I see it now. I get it now. Yeah, I apologize. Sorry about all that. But you put up with it well. I didn't even know at the time, so there's that. Haven't seen them in a while. I think it was my brother's wedding when I saw them. And the cool thing though is I hadn't seen them in quite a few years. And then I show up and talk to them like they both treated me like they actually knew me still. I mean, I just moved back from Missouri when I went to my brother's wedding. So I'd been about 5 years in Missouri, and everyone else was like coming up to me, and then they talked to me, but it was sort of like, Tony, is that you? How have you been? Haven't heard from you ever. They kind of walked up and said like, Hey Tony, how's it going? And then proceeded to get me caught up, as if um, I should have been in the loop the whole time, as opposed to, wow, you've been out of the loop for so long. What brings you back now? So I really appreciated that, or at least that's how I interpreted things in my very egocentric way. They had four kids. First was Amy. Amy's like a little bit older than me, maybe a year, maybe even less than a year. Um, I don't want to, again, not trying to say anything bad. All this is meant as good stuff. Amy was a little bossy. I remember, she'd sometimes come and spend the week with us. Sometimes I'd go and stay with them a little bit. And she was always like, whatever we were playing was Amy's idea. And however we were played was going to be by Amy's rules. Amy ran the show. And if you wanted to play or just survive, it was Amy's way. But yeah, just oldest child, right? Like you tend to fall into that role. And she was, because she had, I guess, the motherly instinct to kind of take charge. Uh, yeah, definitely told me what's what quite often when we would be playing together. But that meant me and Amy were, I think she was a grade ahead of me, so she must have been about a year ahead. Um, yeah, so we were in high school again at rival schools at rival times. Uh, Probably shouldn't go here, but I remember very distinctly being at a track meet, that Pomeroy was also attending, and hearing, just in between events, kind of waiting for the action, waiting for our turn to get up to take care of business or to run or to throw or whatever. And, just teenage boy banter. And I remember a guy from Pomeroy kind of talking about him and his girlfriend. And I don't know what it was. Just it couldn't have been like the way he said it or anything because he didn't know anything. But just kind of wormed its way in the back of my head. I'm like, this girlfriend he's talking about. I bet that's my cousin Amy. And sure enough, as time bore out, it turned out, yeah, he was dating my cousin Amy. Yeah, just that's the type of stuff that happened. That was a little weird. I'll be honest. I was a little awkward around Amy when I like went to her graduation and stuff like that. Following that, just because it's teenage boy stuff. Anyways, Amy, as far as I know, became like an au pair, if I'm saying that right, or glorified nanny type person, and was working on I think some of the ritzy areas of Puget Sound, Bainbridge Island, or something like that. And then ended up meeting some Microsoft guy named Nils, and they eloped, and I believe they like spend uh, their time jet setting across the globe. And that's pretty much all the more I know because I don't think I've seen Amy since probably Grandma Kay's funeral, which has been a little while now. Uh, so yeah, but still a lot of good memories of Amy when we were kids because, like I said, we were so close in age and we were both the oldest. So families of 4 kids, so everything just kind of like lines up for means of comparison. So that means my brother would have been in means of comparison with her younger brother JJ, and wouldn't you know it, they were like again in about the same age, same grade. JJ, I believe, was adopted as a baby, but they included him because JJ, I'm pretty sure, stands for James Jr. I would be surprised if it was like, uh, you know, Jeremiah Jerome or something like that. Pretty sure it's James Jr. Of course, I've never called him anything but JJ or heard anyone else call him anything but JJ, so I don't really know for certain. Guessing, but it's pretty safe bet. So again, JJ went to Pomeroy, so rival, but it was a lot of fun when we would get together because we could make jokes about each other going both way and appreciate the humor because he could make fun of our friends from the sales and stuff, and we would think it was funny because we knew these people, and then we could rip on people from Pomeroy that he would think was funny because he knew about them too. So it actually was a lot of fun being cousins with JJ through that period. Man, JJ, another guy who got married in the last couple of years, and I didn't go to his wedding because I've been out of the loop or in Missouri or working or something like that. So yeah, I need to do something to like re-ingratiate myself into long lost family there. I'm trying to think. What else? I mean, like again, JJ was just another boy cousin, and just we hung out, we played sports, we talked a lot of smack. That was the gist of our relationship, but that was the gist of all of my relationships with most of my cousins. And it's credit to JJ because he doesn't have anything weird or outstanding. He was very chill, very normal, very down to earth, which is a good thing. Um, I have like this weird, silly memory of us like Christmas gifts, because we did the family, but we, it's difficult because it's not like we spent all year together. It's like, oh, it's Christmas time. You guys are both teenage boys. What do you think JJ would want for Christmas? And it's like, well, probably not something that your $10 spending limit is going to. Yeah, and we'd like, really a fishing game, like a Godsmack CD. Uh, hey, another model plane. All right, like this is how this kind of goes. Anyways, So that leaves my cousin Laura, who I think by a quirk of luck, because you adopt a baby, it just so happens that you're going to get pregnant soon after. I was only uh, like like maybe months younger than JJ. I want to say that they were actually in the same graduating class, but don't quote me on that 100%. But Laura, so I'm probably the least close with Laura. Well, I don't know. I have to get to Drew. We'll see. Anyways, Laura again was close in age to my sister Stephanie, so they were probably pretty tight. If I remember correctly, though, she was like FFA warrior princess something or other. Okay, maybe it's not a warrior princess, but president, queen, magistrate. I don't know, something along those lines. I think. Yeah, I remember as a family and Grandma Kay and her parents actually being very proud and her having to like travel the nation and give speeches and stuff like that, which I think she was probably very good at. I have no idea if she's married or in the U.S. or if she's like joined the Peace Corps or something, because I don't know. That seems like something that she would do. Just thinking about it right here, right now. Um, and then there's Drew, who was like the same age as my baby sister Jaylee. And I actually, because there was such an age gap, and I think I scared Drew because I was like this weird, awkward, loud, older kid whenever he saw me, and he was again like my same age as my baby sister. Didn't really hang out much. There wasn't any episodes of me throwing him onto a bed or anything like that with Maddie or anything like that. But we recently became Facebook friends. Not that he probably even realizes that I'm his cousin. But I've been following him and stalking him and seeing all of his political views. And he's living in New York City. And uh, I always knew because I would get reports from Aunt Debbie hearing about him being in plays and whatnot. And remember in high school, I got on stage and caused a lot of trouble. But looks like he actually rolled with it and made it kind of a career. And if you read other instances on the countdown and other places, I have pointed out that other people have pointed out to me that I probably should have gone into some sort of theater, acting, media, something or other, but I didn't. And sometimes I think that was a mistake, and other times I thank my lucky stars that I didn't. But anyways, he's again, it's weird to think baby Drew is now like a 30 something New Yorker. Go figure. All right. So again, hope I didn't offend anyone. I know I probably got a little shorter and condensed as I moved down the list and really long-winded way back when on the Biagis. And this is not a ranking. This is not an order. The whole countdown is not really a ranking. It's just 40 people that have been a great influence on my life, and I'm trying to give all of them a little bit of my gratitude and their just rewards for being a part and an influence in my life. And so there you have it. That is my cousins. We are number 10 on the countdown. We got 9 left, and I'd appreciate it if you guys continued to follow. And if I said something crazy or ridiculous or profound, go ahead and comment and let me know. All right, thanks, y'all. That was fun.